our first speaker, Irene Jones, who's going to put the case for Ada Lovelace. Irene.
Thank you. Just let me get this PowerPoint going. Let's take it full screen. Okay, so actually, apart from this slide, I've only got 2 slides. The first one is really about her life, who she was and what she did. I ought to have it on, yeah, and I ought to have it on slideshow. What am I doing? Yeah, and the other slide is like her, about her legacy. Gosh, what's it doing? Oh, I don't know. I'd forgotten about it. Is it okay like it is? Can you see it like that? Is that okay? Hello?
I can't see anything, Irene. Are you
Oh, I've
presenting?
got to do. No, I've got. Sorry, no, sorry. I've got to share the screen. I do apologise. I am not used to this. Not in this way. Is that better? Is that
Yes. Yeah, we
okay?
can see that now.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ada was born Augusta Ada Byron in 1815. So she was the daughter of Lord and Lady Byron, and Byron, of course, was a famous poet. And strangely enough, she spent her early years at her mother's family home in Kirby Hall in Kirby Mallory in Leicestershire, which is only a few miles from where I live, because basically her father split up and left her mother not long after she was born. So her mother went back to the family home, and her mother insisted that she had a really good education. She organised private education to a very high level in all kinds of subjects, which Paul has mentioned. Languages is one of them, mathematics and science particularly, which is very, very unusual. Remember, this is the early 1800s, and girls probably didn't get an education on the whole, let alone an education in things like maths and science. So she was very lucky, really, that her mother insisted on that. Now, in 1834, she visited the industrial north of England, and there she saw this jacquard loom. And the interesting thing, I think, about that is it used punched cards to direct the pattern weaving. Very interesting at that time of the thing. So after that, she met Charles Babbage at a party. So that's where it all started, that eventually led to her working with Charles Babbage later on. Now, I don't know if you, like me, have ever wondered how come she's got the name Lovelace? She was born a Byron, so, and her mother's name wasn't Lovelace, so how come she got this name of Lovelace? And it was because she married William Kingnall, who was the first Earl of Lovelace, and that's where her name comes from. In 1843, she published a translation from the French of an article on Babbage's analytical engine, and that was the article in French was actually by an Italian engineer, but she added, a lot of notes of her own. And the notes included the first published description of a stepwise sequence of operation for solving certain mathematical problems. She went on to write code to calculate Bernoulli numbers, and you might be pleased to know that I'm not going to even try to explain what they are today. But sadly, when she was only 36, she died of uterine cancer, which of course there was nothing really they could do for her once that was found. So we're going to move on now to what I think is her legacy. First of all, the Ada programming language, which was named after her in the 1980s. Secondly, the Ada Lovelace Institute, also named after her. Now, this is an independent research institute and deliberative body, and its mission is to ensure that data and AI work for people and society. Thirdly, we've got the Ada Lovelace Day. I think that's an annual thing, the Ada Lovelace Day. This is to celebrate and promote the achievements of all women in STEM fields. And I think she was, and she is still, I think, an inspiration for women and men to pursue careers in computing. Because, as Paul previously mentioned, this is a field which is so underrepresented by women. So it's really good that today some people are still, using her name with her can-do attitude, to try something new is having an effect still today. Now, the next thing on the slide there is a quote, is exact quote, which I'll read out as it is. The analytical engine has no pretensions whatever to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to perform. So she foresaw that you could use computers, for much more than just doing, mathematical calculations. So really, more than a century before anything came into being, she foresaw the full potential of computers. Now, the statement there, that quote, if you like, it had an influence on Alan Turing's work, because he studied her work and he refuted her statement, because he was doing work in the 1950s on thinking machines, and he didn't agree with what she'd said. So that's quite a contentious and important point. Beyond that, we have the Lovelace Test, which was developed in the early 2000s. And to pass this test, a computer has to create something original all by itself. And this test is a rival for the Turing test. So arguably, yes, and it is an argument. Not everyone by any means is agreed about this. We argue about whether she really was the first computer programmer. She certainly was a pioneer of computing, as the blue plaque there on the right of the slide tells you. That blue plaque there is in St James's Square in London, where she later lived. So I think it's very widely agreed that she was a pioneer of computing, even if not everybody agrees about whether she was the first programmer. I think one of the problems was that the program that she wrote for the analytical engine was never actually run, because the analytical engine never got built. So that was rather unfortunate. But they do say that she thought very carefully about how operations could be organized into groups that could be repeated, thereby inventing the loop. And she realized how important it was to track the state of variables as they changed, and she introduced a notation to illustrate those changes. So finally, hot off the press, I read yesterday, as further evidence of Ada's lasting legacy, that Loughborough University, also in Leicestershire, have unveiled a new supercomputer, and they've called it Ada Lovelace. I rest my case.